14 months after he buried his wife, Ralph Waldo Emerson walked back to her grave and opened the coffin. On a cold morning in 1832, he stood in the cemetery at Roxbury, lifted the lid, and looked at what was left of the woman he loved more than anything alive. Perhaps he needed to see for himself, to know whether anything of her had survived, whether the soul he preached about was real or only a word. He found no answers in that coffin. He would spend the rest of his life searching for one. In the heavens, in the minds of great men, in places far from home, he was looking in the wrong direction. The thing he was searching for was so small, he could have crushed it under his boot. He had not always been a man who doubted. Emerson was born into religion the way other children are born into family trade. His father was a minister, his grandfather was a minister. When his father died, Ralph was 8, and the family fell into a poverty so sharp that he and his brother shared one winter coat between them. He worked his way through Harvard and into a pulpit of his own, where he told his congregation exactly what he had been told as a boy, that God lived above them, in a distant heaven, certain and out of reach. He had inherited his faith the way he inherited that coat, second-hand, and standing over Ellen's open coffin, that borrowed certainty came apart in his hands. The break came over something small. His church asked him to serve communion, the bread, the wine, the body, and the blood, and Emerson found he could not do it. He would not stand before people and perform a miracle he no longer believed in. So he resigned. He gave up the pulpit, the salary, the whole identity he had been handed. At 29, he was a widower, with no church and no God he could name. He did what the broken do. He left. He sailed for Europe to find the great minds of the age, hoping one of them still held the certainty he had lost. He found Wordsworth, grown old, reciting his own poems from memory. He found Coleridge, who lectured at him for an hour and barely let him speak. They were brilliant, and they were only men, guarding old answers. Whatever he was looking for, it was not in their libraries either. He came home to Concord, Massachusetts, and one unremarkable day, crossing a bare common, wet ground, bare trees, nothing beautiful about it, it happened. What he wrote about it became one of the strangest sentences in American letters. Standing on the bare ground, his head lifted into the open air, all mean egotism vanished. He became, he said, a transparent eyeball. He was nothing, he saw everything. The currents of the universe moved straight through him. He had spent his whole life looking up into the heavens, into the minds of great men, even into the face of the dead, for proof that the infinite was real. It had been under his boot the entire time. He set it down in a thin book called Nature in 1836, and the idea was almost childlike and completely radical. The entire cosmos, every law, every force, every mystery, is present in every one of its parts, all of it folded into a single blade of grass. If you could only learn how to look. He was not saying that nature was pretty. He was saying that nature was total, that a quiet, focused gaze at one small living thing could carry a person further than any cathedral ever built. And then his philosophy was put on trial. In 1842, his son Waldo, 5 years old, the joy of his life, died of scarlet fever in the space of a few days. Here is the question that should break any man who claims the universe lives inside the blade of grass. Does it still live there when your own child is in the ground? His answer was not a tidy yes. 2 years later he wrote about it with terrible honesty. That grief had taught him nothing, that he could not get the loss any closer, could not make the boy real again no matter how he looked. The man who found the universe in a leaf could not press his own son back into his arms, and he refused to pretend otherwise. Grief handed him no comforting doctrine. What it left was smaller and harder. The practice of attending to whatever was still in front of him, while it lasted. He could not hold the dead. He could still look at the living. In the end, that was all he had left, far more literally than anyone could have guessed. Most people remember Emerson as the prophet of self-reliance, of bright American optimism. Almost no one knows how he ended. In his last years, his memory left him, slowly, and then all at once. He forgot the names of ordinary things. He would point at an umbrella and call it the thing that strangers take away. He forgot the names of his closest friends, standing over the coffin of the poet Longfellow. He said that this had been a sweet and beautiful soul, but that he had completely forgotten the man's name. And here is the part that is almost unbearable, and almost a kind of grace. It did not torment him. The man who had taught the world to find the eternal inside the present moment now lived in nothing but the present moment. No past pressing down on him, no labels left on the things around him, only the bare fact of a tree, the air, a blade of grass, seen at last, without a single word standing in the way. An old man stands in a field outside Concord. He can no longer tell you what it is called. He is looking at it anyway. The idea did not die with him. A young printer named Walt Whitman read Emerson and called his life's work Leaves of Grass, writing that a single leaf of grass was no less than the journey work of the stars. Henry David Thoreau, Emerson's neighbor, walked into the woods to live deliberately, to learn what one pond and one season could teach. What Emerson handed down was not a doctrine, it was a permission. You do not need a priest to reach the infinite, or heaven kept somewhere else. The divine is not hiding above you, it is in front of you, ordinary and complete, waiting for anyone willing to look closely enough. He went looking for the soul in a coffin, in Europe, in the heavens. He found it at last, in the smallest and greenest and most common thing on earth, a blade of grass, and a gaze quite enough to hold the entire universe inside it.